founder and CEO and owner, half owner, of Whole Soy Company. People are talking, I've been completely vegan for about 4 years. I started my beard again. I married my wife in 1968 and had a beard. And then kind of off and on, different times. I was clean shaven for many, many years. And then I decided to be 100% vegan because of genetically modified food here in the United States. I went to Sweden in 1965, and I essentially lived there for 29 years. One of my best friends is an organic farmer. He's definitely not vegan, but he's very much for organics, and he and I agree that if this planet we live on is going to survive, we really have to look at the way we're treating the planet. And this has to do with all the fertilizers, the pesticides, the chemicals, and everything in the carpets. Everything that we're doing today is piling on more and more toxins that we carry in our bodies. So I really respect all of you for being vegans. Those of you who are trying to be vegan, completely vegan, it's a fantastic thing you're doing for our planet. I'm going to briefly say something about a vegan who lives in Sonoma and works a lot among people who are not. So you go to breakfast, and there's absolutely nothing vegan there. So I decided, well, the way to do this is to say, I'd like the veggie scramble with some of the house potatoes, a slice of toast, and hold the eggs, please. And that's my standard. And I'm amazed at how different people react to that order. So my interest in soy goes back to 1975. In Sweden, my PhD is in religious history, so I was doing research at a place called Ananda Cooperative Village up on Tylerfoot Road. It's an intentional religious community, and they follow the teachings of Swami Yogananda. So I was doing field research there, and I met Bill Shirtliff. How many here know who William Shirtliff and Akiko Yochi? Please raise your hand. I'm that old? Okay. In 1975, there was no English understanding of the non-Asian population about a product called tofu. Tofu and soy milk were manufactured by the Chinese, the Japanese, House Foods in Los Angeles was primary one, Asamai in San Francisco. But there were Asian companies producing soy milk and tofu in the United States long before 1975. I consumed tofu with my parents if I ate Chinese meal that had bean curd in it, but nobody knew exactly what that was. Bill came out with a book produced by Autumn Press in 1975, and he had lived in Japan. He was a Zen Buddhist. Lived in Japan for 5 years. He toured many tofu manufacturing facilities, and his wife Akiko Yochi did beautiful drawings. And if you can ever look at the original 8.5 by 11 book of tofu, it's a beautiful book. And then Bill and Akiko toured the United States. So between 1975 and 1978, it went from 0 non-Asian soy milk and tofu companies to almost 300. And there was a symposium in Colorado called the Soy Crafters Conference. And it was the very first time that people, mostly people like myself from all over the world, accumulated who were interested in tofu. So fast forward in 1980, my wife's father and Fred said, Ted, instead of just making tofu at home, why don't you start a tofu factory? Well, I was teaching at the University of Uppsala, but I thought, yeah, why not? So my wife's father and I, we found a juice company. I had a Korean professor friend who donated $10,000. I borrowed $10,000 from my mother, and we started Sweden's first tofu factory. Today there's tofu in every grocery store in Sweden. We also did soy ice cream in Sweden. If you go to Scandinavia, to Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, or even England, in England it's called tofu lime glacé, but in Scandinavia it's tofu lime glace, and it's a milk-free ice cream, and it's made from soy. In 1994, I sold everything in Sweden. There's a long, detailed reason why. But I came to California with my family, and I started making silk, soy milk. I did that for 2 years, and then it's a complicated story what happened then. But I decided to start with soy yogurt. So the soy yogurt, which we came up with the name whole soy yogurt. And the reason we call it whole soy yogurt, how many of you have read the book by Kayla Daniels called The Whole Soy Story? The Dark Side of Soy Foods? Anybody? Nobody? Anybody here consume soy foods? Raise your hand. Wow. Okay. So Kayla Daniels wrote a book, and it came out around 2005, 2006. She was supported by the Weston A. Price Organization. And the Weston A. Price Organization is your worst nightmare. And these people are today suing the FDA to remove the heart-healthy symbol on soy foods. Now, in a way, what she writes about, I just recently read the book again, is correct. In the if you go back to Asia, Asia traditionally does what I'm going to call traditional soy foods. They take soybeans, they soak the soybeans, they grind them, they heat, they make a slurry, separate the fiber from the slurry, they get soy milk. You can consume soy milk, or you can coagulate it with magnesium chloride or calcium sulfate into tofu. So tofu is bean curd, it's soybean curd. The other food that is made naturally is even better than tofu, and that's tempeh. Tempeh is my #1 favorite soy food. It's a traditional soy food. You soak the soybeans, you heat them, you don't grind them up. You just press out the water, you take off the shell that floats to the top when you cook the beans, and you add Rhizosporus oligosporus. And that Rhizosporus oligosporus does to the soybean what you have to do to make the #1 legume in the world, which has the highest protein and highest oil per acre, a digestible food. And that is remove the trypsin inhibitors, which prevent the body from absorbing the soy protein and removing oligosaccharides. Now, one of the oligosaccharides is sugar, and one of the sugars is raffinose, and it causes bloating and gas. So the Chinese learned very early that don't cook your soybeans and eat them, don't make soy nuts. Whatever you do, go through the process, soaking the soybeans, making soy milk and tofu. And by the way, that process is just heat and grinding and separation. And tempeh is the whole soybean with Rhizosporus oligosporus, so you get all the fiber, all the protein and oil. It's a natural legume, and you get a lot of B17 and B12. Okay, now let's talk about the United States. And I'm going to take a deep breath. 94% of all the soybeans grown in the United States are grown as oilseed, and they've always been grown as oilseed. So they grow the soybeans to press the oil from the soybean. They do that using a chemical called hexane. Hexane is an ugly, ugly solvent. It's very detrimental to our environment, very detrimental to employees who work around it. But hexane solvent is absolutely necessary to extract all the oil from the soybean, or the corn, or the canola, or the sunflower. So if you're buying any kind of oil and it doesn't say it's organic, you're consuming some hexane and you're contributing to that detrimental environmental process. Okay, the soybeans that we use, these are seeds that are grown in high protein, low oil. They're non-GMO, they're organic. They're grown by organic, only 4 big organic farmers that process and grow these organic non-GMO soybeans as a food-grade soybean, not as an oil seed. That acreage represents today 0.34% of American soybean acreage. If we allow this to continue, particularly an attack on the organic food system in the United States. The FDA and the USDA has approved soy, BT corn, alfalfa, beets, recently apples, to be genetically modified. The people in the FDA are as a revolving door between companies like Monsanto and our government. So what they're doing is they're essentially patenting our food chain. And the most dangerous part about this is that most people don't have a clue. Just don't have a clue. So, fast forward again, we have a soy yogurt company called Whole Soy, non-GMO organic soybean. In the beginning, I had built some equipment here installed in a Chinese company's facility called Furama Soy Milk, and it was Soy Foods of America. Laura and her father, Ken Lee, and I installed the equipment in their soy milk manufacturing plant, and I paid them by the gallon of soy base that they made for me. And with that, I would provide soy base for soy milk to some companies and to dairies. So I would go to a dairy. The first one was a dairy in Fullerton. It's now owned by Schreiber. It's been owned, when I did it, by Morningstar back in 1998. And I would go to the dairy and say, look, and I would say, you have really nice equipment for making yogurt. And I would compliment them, and then I would say, would you mind making some soy yogurt on the weekend? And in the beginning, it was not taken well, but by 1998, the Fullerton plant started making soy yogurt. Believe it or not, the cup goes into whole soy yogurt is the same cup that goes into Trader Joe's soy yogurt. It's just a cup change. And I know so many food scientists who say, your whole soy yogurt is so much better than that Trader Joe's soy yogurt. And I've signed an agreement with Trader Joe's not to tell you that, but at the end of this talk, I'll tell you why I can't. So I would make the soy yogurt. The first time we did it, we had 4 flavors. We had to make 2 pallets of each flavor. I sold more soy yogurt to Trader Joe's than I could sell to anybody else. But then within 14 months, we became the leading soy yogurt company in the United States. And we held that position to April of 1993. In April of 1993, what had happened, I was at Fullerton. They asked me to leave because I was too small. I went to Superstore Industries. They asked me to leave because they didn't like the problems they were having with my yogurt, which was yeast and mold. So I moved to another company owned by Lucerne down in the City of Commerce in LA. And that was tough because what happens in these dairies is you're a second-class citizen. So if anything is problematic, they're going to help you last. And if something goes wrong, they're going to do their dairy first and do your next. So we've always had issues co-packing in these dairies. In 2010, I was offered the opportunity to help design and build a yogurt filling plant, manufacturing plant in Visalia with a family-owned business. And in June of 2010, we started that. So for the very first time, rather than my adapting my formulas to whatever equipment the dairy had, now suddenly I had a manufacturing plant that was assembled for the purpose of making the whole soy yogurts. Then 2010, 2011, 2012, we expanded our business almost 20-25% a year. So in April of 2013, we were the #1 soy yogurt in the United States. Our competitors was Silk, which was owned by Dean Foods, a $14 billion company, and they actually dropped out of the market. They couldn't compete with us. The other one was Wildwood. It was a $1 billion Korean company owned by Pomone, and they stopped making the Wildwood yogurts. Stonyfield and Nancy's Yogurt remained. Then in April, I was informed by the sheriff of Visalia that the family who was making my yogurt were going to be evicted from the premises in 2 days. Apparently they had not paid their sewer bill the year before, and there had been all kinds of legal things going on back and forth. I knew nothing about that. So on my daughters, I have 3 children, and my youngest child is Mia Nordquist, and she's born on April 8th. And on April 8th, I was told that on April 10th, the factory was going to be closed down and anything remaining would be confiscated. So we came with about 20 semis, moved everything out of that facility, all of the supplies, all the packaging. I leased the important machines. They're very high-tech fillers. There's an Oyster filler that does 346-ounce cups per minute. And there's a 24-ounce filler that would do about 110 cups a minute. And to match that kind of speed and filling yogurt cups, we had 2 Delcor spot packers. So that package was about a $1.5 million package to lease. And I took on that lease and I started making the lease payments. And we tried to find, actually the only dairy that was willing to take us back was the one where I started in Fullerton. And the dairy in Fullerton was owned first by Morningstar, then by Dean Foods, and now by a company called Schreiber Foods. And they said, yeah, we'll take you. And then after I spent a lot of time working with them to start, they gave me a tolling fee that would cost me more than $3 million a year. And a tolling fee is such that a co-packer, they will pay for the ingredients according to your formula and your stipulation. Then you sign a contract and you pay for every case that they produce. What they take was called a tolling fee. And from 1999 to this 2013, I was paying, since my volume kept going up, I was paying 10 cents a cup for the 6 ounce, and they were asking 18 cents a cup. And that would have, it was no point even starting because we would have been losing money than making it. So my partner and I have 2 minutes left. My partner and I decided we would build our own plant. So we borrowed 2 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay. So we borrowed money from our homes, put my whole pension in. Didn't hawk my wife's jewelry. I could have. I have that kind of wife, but that didn't happen. But we put everything we could personally put into this, and we tried to find investors who would invest in this type of business. And this is a very unique business. And you're talking about a business that has control from the non-GMO organic seed to the finished product. I had a QC, or a quality assurance manager, that I've known for years. I have a product manager that has 15 years experience. We have people that are just unbelievable and would go at any point, day or night, to make this project succeed. And during this time, we continually tried to get additional investors. And all of these investors would ask for one thing: we want your financials. And they didn't believe in what we were doing. So this is the end, right? So I have to announce today that we're closing our doors. So we've sent to the trade notification. UNFI is United Natural Foods Inc., and they're the #1 natural food distributor in the United States. They have about 85% of the natural food distribution. And if you want to be in Whole Foods, you have to be in UNFI. And UNFI told us last week that they just decided not to pay us. So about $300,000, they said, we're just not going to pay you because we want to audit what's going on. And that shut us down, because we didn't have the money to continue. Any questions?
How much money do you need?
We closed the doors yesterday in the Modesto plant and told all the employees it was over. But we would need $700,000 soon to buy materials to go back up and run. And we'd need another $2 million by the end of the year to get over the hill. And it's about a $14 million plant. If you were going to go out and build a plant like this, it would cost you about $14 million. But we just never, in fact, we had people from Whole Foods loaned us $400,000. And Whole Foods has been phenomenal. And I talked to them at the Natural Product Expo. And at the Natural Product Expo, we showed that we were, of the 10 top soy yogurts, we already had 7. And we were growing at 45%, and Silk and Nancy's and Stonyfield were going back by 35%. So it was like a little engine that could have got to the top of the mountain, but unfortunately we didn't make it. Yes?
You have a toilet.
No.
Power plant ventures. He's looking for people like you. They have to be established. They can't be a startup. I have a number of you.
Well, can I meet you after this meeting? Certainly,
Yeah.
I actually lived in Japan
yes.
for many years, and before I came back home to the States, that was my introduction to the soy back in the 90s. But when I came back to the States, in Japan it's all fresh. You go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
So I was really surprised when I came back here, it was all pre-packaged and it wasn't the freshness. So
You know why that is? Because Japan, in this sense, is an amazing country. The Japanese forbid mass production of tofu. I mean, here in the United States, we do everything to promote big corporations. In fact, the corporations are promoting our politics. But in Japan, it's illegal. So in Japan, you have like 36,000 tofu manufacturers all over Japan, 6,000 in Tokyo alone. So that works, and that's true all over the world. You used to have bakers around the corner, everywhere. So everybody was working. But we've decided we want a monoculture. We want our agriculture to be one type of food. We bought the idea that you have to have genetically modified food to feed the world, which is absurd. We've got 8 times more food than we need. It's a total scam that we're living in acceptance.